We're going to go over some of the guidelines that you need to follow when creating dimension drawings. And so first here we have a list of guidelines to look at. So let's go over those. Number one says match dimension precision to the measurement precision. And so if the object or whatever is created, in this case uses fractional inches, you can dimension that in fractional inches. If it uses decimal inches to a thousandth of an inch, you need to dimension it in decimal inches to the thousandths of an inch. So that's guideline number one. Guideline number two, it says only dimension a view that accurately shows the feature. And so we have many different types of lines that we see on our example here. This line with an arrow to it is called a dimension line. And so that dimension line holds the number and it shows where that number, that dimension, what it is referencing. And so it's important that the view that actually shows the feature is the one that should be dimensioned. So in this case, we have a little cutout feature here in our part, this cutout. We could have dimensioned that width in the top view up here, but it wasn't dimensioned in the top view because it doesn't show the feature. It just shows a line. And so that's why it was dimensioned in the front view. And so we want to actually dimension the view where we see the feature. Number three says never dimension to a hidden line. And so in our drawing here, we have a few hidden lines. Those hidden lines represent this hole that goes through the object. So we would never dimension to a hidden line. You need to find the view that shows the actual feature. So in this case, the hole. And so that hole is dimensioned in the right side view over here. Number four says never underdimension a, a, a part or a drawing. And in this case, that means, for instance, if we didn't have this location, or excuse me, this size dimension for this cutout and the height, we wouldn't know how big that cutout was. And so we need to make sure that we have every dimension that needs to be included. Number five says do not overdimension. Overdimensioning, I think, is the most common mistake I see people make with dimensioning. And so what that means is you wouldn't dimension things that are represented in two views in both views. You just need to dimension them in one view. For instance, this size dimension for this notched feature, I didn't also dimension it in the top view right here. Because if I did, it's representing the exact same thing in two different views. And so we never want to over dimension our drawing. Next, it says do not cross dimension lines. So whenever we have a dimension line, this line right here, we want to avoid crossing those with other dimension lines. And so we want to make sure that our dimension lines don't cross each other. The next thing it says, number 7, is leave a gap between extension lines and object lines. And so here we have an extension line. It extends up from the object. It does not touch the object. And so this extension line references where the dimension is going to be placed. And then the last one, guideline number 8, says avoid crossing leader lines. And so, for example, we have a leader line. That's what this angled line that's dimensioning this hole is called. That leader line doesn't cross an extension line and it doesn't cross a dimension line. And so we figured out where to put that so it doesn't cross anything. And so that's your dimensioning guidelines that we'll need to follow when creating drawings.